My name is Matt Johnson. I'm originally from Denver, Iowa. I go to school at UNI, and I work part-time at Famous Dave's. My dad was always involved in the church. He was my Sunday school teacher throughout high school. And then my senior year, he was involved in a motorcycle accident, him and my mother. He was induced in a coma for about 3 months. That was pretty tough on me. Kind of lost the role model, the dominant role in my life. At that point, there was some church and some Christ involved, and when that happened, I kind of lost sight of that. And started using some drugs and alcohol to kind of cover my, hurt, my disappointment, my, pain. And that went on for quite some time, and eventually he did recover. When he came back home, definitely a little bit of a role reversal. I remember feeding him in a feeding tube, and definitely just keeping an eye on him. His balance and coordination was definitely off, just from the actual brain injury. However, when he got better, I still was going down the path of drinking, doing drugs. At that point, I was probably addicted to them, and so anytime I had a problem, whether it was what size it was, well, let's go out and drink or do some drugs. And it wasn't until probably eight years from when I turned 18 that I probably ran into some legal problems. And I would bounce back and forth. I need Christ to get me out of this certain bind. And time would go on where a couple of weeks, a month, where I would feel close to God. And by the time, everything was back to normal, the legal problems weren't an issue. And, I'd eventually wind back in the same sort of pattern, using drugs and alcohol to, basically cope with any type of stress I had in my life. I did have some more legal problems stemming from alcohol and drug use. So I did spend some time in jail. And at that point, I stood up in front of probably 30 other prisoners and gave myself to God.
I was born in Waterloo, moved to Cedar Falls when I was 3. I started going to Catholic church when I was born. Every single Sunday, we never missed. When I started coming to Big House, I started coming every week. There was a bulletin, a big poster outside of Big House one Wednesday night, and it said Vacation Bible School. And you could sign up to work with all these little kids, and I really liked little kids. So I signed up to serve by myself, Vacation Bible School. I did that and had a great week with a bunch of 3- and 4-year-olds, and it was a lot of fun. Then I started talking to some other people, and they got me plugged in with Junior Grade Adventure. And so every Sunday morning, I would do Junior Grade Adventure, and then I'd work with the little kids on Sunday mornings, and then I would go to church right after, and then I would go to Big House still on Wednesday nights. And so I went on my first caravan in Canada, and it was wonderful. There was a lot of downtime for me to kind of meet other people and learn about the Bible and kind of figure out who I thought God was personally. And towards the end of the trip, we had a night where we could either commit for the first time or recommit. And since I'd grown up in the church, I felt like I was a Christian and I knew God, so I didn't feel like making a first-time commitment was right for me. So I made a recommitment on Caravan, but it was kind of like a first commitment in a way. So it was my first where I chose my faith for myself, and this is what I wanted for me for the first time in my life.
Well, when I was little, I didn't go to church usually. Religion wasn't a big part of my childhood in my family or extended family until about my 8th grade year. My dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. At that point in time, I was just kind of really thrown off guard. But at that time, I knew that in times of trouble like that prayer can really help someone out. I didn't really know a lot. I didn't really have a relationship with God at that point. So, I just started praying every night, just to help my dad out, just to get him better, get rid of this pain and stuff that he's dealing with, until that next fall he died. After all those months of prayer, I think just at that point in time, I'm just like, how could that happen? I felt like God had abandoned me. He had forgotten me, cast me aside, and I was just in a bad part of my life right there. That was the worst day of my life. A few months later, I picked up a guitar, started playing music, eventually meeting with some friends, and we actually started a band. Started playing a bunch of shows, going on a tour even across the Midwest. But at that point in time, my life started going down a pretty bad spiral, down a pretty bad path. I developed a pretty bad problem with marijuana. I was involved with a bunch of sexual activities, temptations. I was in a house at one point that had a lot of bad things. I was around cocaine, acid, a lot of hard drugs. I was working early morning truck at Fairway back home, and I got a phone call that one of the members of that old band had died in a car accident. He was a really good friend of mine. And it kind of flashed back to that day with my dad, and I just came back to that, and I just, I couldn't really think straight, like, how could this happen again, in such short time, that not only had God taken my dad, but he also took one of my really good friends. And at his memorial, he had a table set up with a bunch of stuff, like pictures, videos from childhood and stuff. Then at the end of the table, there was a sheet of paper, this photocopy sheet of paper, that he collected a bunch of these old fortunes that he got out of fortune cookies from one of the Chinese restaurants back home. And I kept reading through them. There were some pretty inspirational ones, and then I got down to that last one, and it said right next to it that it was the last one that he got a few days before the accident, and they found it in his wallet, and it said, "You'll witness a miracle." At that point in time, I just had this feeling come around me that it just kind of surrounded me, like this presence that just kind of like knocked me in the head and just set my mind at ease. It just put me at rest, and I could just not hear the words, but I could just feel the words around me that said, "I'm here, and I'm not gonna let go." After that, I had a pretty good heart-to-heart with my brother Dave at his house. And we talked about God for almost 5 hours, about life. I told him everything that I'd done. And I told him I want to change. I want to accept Christ in my heart and just live a better life. But after that, I started going to church in Marshalltown. And my life has just gone a complete 180.